I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is our mini episode number 1.
Yes, and even though this is going to Patreon supporters first, it will be going public. So we're going to do a little spiel like always. If you want to contact us about this or any other episode, you can find us on Twitter at LoreTogether. If you want to find me specifically on Reddit, I am under the username LoreTogetherPod. And if you want to contact us directly, you can do that through loretogether@gmail.com. If you have found this episode after we went public, you can also find more of them over at patreon.com/loretogether, where you can also find early episodes, our streams, and all the other fun stuff.
Yay, so much fun stuff.
So, mini episode 1.
Yes.
This is going to be, we're going to take a glimpse at Atrus's journal.
Okay.
About worlds that we never visit.
Okay, and for the uninitiated, just so that you know, Atrus is one of the characters from the Myst series. In fact, one of the most integral characters of the Myst series.
Probably, like, aside from the player character, probably the main protagonist, I would say.
Yes, yeah, because the protagonist is always the stranger that ends up in the world.
Not always, but in the ones we've covered, yes.
Yeah, okay. And Atrus tends to be kind of like this hidden ally.
Mm-hmm. A lot of these are from his time on Myst. They were all the ones that were burned in the library.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so we're talking... And we're literally just going to read his journal entries about these. I'm not going to... There's no other source for me to go from. These are actually all taken from the Riven website back when it still existed. Okay. This was kind of like in their lead up to Riven coming out. They put out little tiny journal entries type stuff.
Oh, wow. So it was kind of like a marketing ploy /
That's my interpretation.
That's
my interpretation. There is absolutely no information. I assume that's what it is. But the only place I can find it is on the Wayback Machine. And that is kind of a hard place to find information that's complete.
Right. No, that's understandable.
So, we're going to start with the first one, actually. And I'm just reading straight from his journal. These are just his entire thoughts.
Okay.
First entry is for Ancam.
Ancam? Okay. So, are these worlds that, like, his... Now...
Some are places he's been.
Yeah.
Or written. Mm-hmm. Some are just mentions of a place.
Yeah.
And some are thoughts of a place that he maybe had never did write.
Okay. So none of this is stuff like anything Catherine's wrote or Gen's wrote?
Right.
Okay.
Ancam. After only one visit to this age, I am already astounded by its variety. Though I intellectually understood what this age would contain, I couldn't have imagined its beauty. I couldn't have imagined the delightful dance that is reenacted every day as almost all the organic and inorganic objects on this island respond to the light of the sun or the change in temperature. Mm. The trees alone have held me spellbound. At night, they bend their soft, thin trunks lying across the landscape and hills, looking like so many serpents sleeping under the light of the moon.
What?
When morning arrives, they begin to move, to twist and lift, to pull themselves towards the light of the rising sun. The forest literally rises up out of the dim landscape, lifting thousands of branches and broad, thick leaves high above the ground. And then, as the trees warm, their pale blue color begins to change to green. As the new color spreads throughout the length of their graceful trunks, as noon approaches, the green becomes a yellow-orange.
What the heck?
I can hardly suppress my excitement. What treasures are waiting for me here?
And just thinking about that on a scientific sense... That makes no sense. Not even the part where the trees bend and go to sleep, essentially. So, like a tree taking a nap, that doesn't bother me as much as the leaf progression. So, because of just knowing what little I know about, the process where leaves, they take the light in and convert that into energy.
Yeah, this is... again, when we're dealing with Myst, we're dealing with science fantasy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Kind of like in a weird way.
Yeah, because I mean, for those who don't know, when leaves change color in the fall, and you get those orange, reds, and yellows, that's basically the chlorophyll doing these last ditch effort before they burn out all their energy and die. They're like, and we're gonna get all the sugars, and then they die. And that's pretty much the whole point of it. And that's why then as soon as they change colors, then they fall off because they've burnt out every little bit of their cellular being. Right. So to have them, change from blue to green, and then you said, oh yeah, and then they turned into these brilliant yellows, and I'm like, so they kill themselves and regrow overnight? I'm sorry, maybe I'm just thinking about it too hard.
Well, you're also thinking about, let's be entirely honest here, ages in Myst are sometimes crazy worlds or quote universes,
right,
that may not obey our laws of physics or biology or whatever.
Right, like Catherine's crazy waterfall defying gravity and that kind of thing. Okay, yeah, so, that's fair.
Let's get to our next one. We actually heard about this one before because somebody mentioned it in our Twitter when we released our second episode.
Oh, yeah.
This is Everdunes. The nature of this world thrives in spite of the harsh conditions I imposed upon it in my writing. High temperature and lack of surface water are not enough to disallow vegetation or even animal life. During my first visit, I assumed the arid land would support nothing, or at least only plants and animals similar to the arid lands at home. Upon arrival, my assumption was confirmed: barren dunes of sand, or at least I thought so at first. Closer inspection revealed a subterranean plant structure just beneath the sandy surface. I discovered it by simply walking. I sank in at one point to my knees. The growth of the plants opened up small areas of oxygen beneath the surface where tiny animals and insects can be found.
Oh my gosh.
I am ever amazed at the diversity found in the undefined elements, those elements between the lines of my script, the very writings of the maker that continue to dwarf my creativity at every stroke.
It's another thing that kind of challenges my understanding of the world, because plants need a root structure. And you would find it, if it's a dune that you could sink knee deep into as a grown man. Where are they securing those roots? So again, it's just so fantastical. It's really hard for me to just...
Oh, you're going to love this next one then.
Oh no. And the sad thing is, guys, I'm not here to, to poo-poo on anybody's imagination or anything. But
no, they all sound great. It's just I don't know what it is.
I'm trying to make sense of it.
And we never see it.
Right.
So the next one, and these are all, Atrus names his ages, so these are all his names.
Okay.
So this one is called Gravitation.
What is this, a thesis? What the heck?
A light show in the cosmos. I have only to sit back and enjoy as the events unfold from my vantage point. This is why I write. This is my reward. Months of calculations and computations, orbits within orbits within orbits. Now I have moons, large and small, not with simple circular orbits, but which rise quickly, slow and halt, and then dance off at right angles, or rest at the horizon. Meteors that skim the surface of the atmosphere, brightening the night. Suns, not one or two, but 6, all varying in intensity and color, attracting each other with silent waves. Until now, I have only seen this complexity on paper, in diagrams, and in formulas, only imagining what it would look like. Now it is real. Fleeting, but real. I write in haste, waiting for the last show before I leave. For the diversity and complexity is this age's undoing. No, undoing is not the right word, for though I will never be able to return here, the show will continue with even greater beauty and drama. When the unstable orbits decay, the suns will collide, and the real show will begin. And that is a show that I can still only imagine.
Right, because you can't stay for that. You know what actually that reminds me of? So, spoiler alert for a book that's 60, 70 years old now. Arthur C. Clarke wrote a book called Childhood's End, which I loved reading. And near the end of it, there was this very scientifically curious gentleman who sneaks onto a spaceship of these aliens. The aliens realize, oh my gosh, what the heck, you snuck on? And then they said, well, we can bring you back, but Earth's not going to be the same at all. And he comes back to realize that the Earth's population under a certain age basically has gained these higher sentient connection of the universe powers. And the rest of humanity pretty much is dying off. So what he knows as humanity is gone. And this alien race basically explains that they're not able to do it, but they aid other planets whose essentially the planet's going to be destroyed once this new form of humanity is going to go off and join the rest of the other big bad psychic power dudes. And so this guy gets a chance to be on the planet Earth when it happens and to describe it. Because Arthur C. Clarke is just, he just was like, yeah, I'm just going to make it atypically hopeful and bleak at the same time.
It reminds me actually of Doctor Who. I think it was Christopher Eccleston, where he takes his companion. I don't remember which companion it is because I only watched a couple episodes of it. But
Christopher Eccleston always had Rose, if I remember correctly.
I couldn't tell you.
I'd have to ask. My mom's the Whovian.
There's one episode where it's like the end of the Earth or the end of the universe or something, and like she gets to watch it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, the end of the universe actually is a plot with the next Doctor, David Tennant, where...
End of the Universe is also a major plot in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series.
Yeah.
Because there's a restaurant that goes back and forth over that time where the universe ends.
Right. Okay. But the David Tennant one, it was basically the end of the universe. They were trying to figure out a way to survive, and basically they needed a time travel machine. I won't even get into it. It was a good series. I watched that one with my mom.
Okay. Next one is called Oasis.
Okay.
And this is not what I pictured when I read that name.
Yeah, Oasis makes me think of the game where, of course, it's the typical theme of I'm around water and we're on an island.
Its velvet skin brushed my face as I lay engulfed in the field of tall, cool clover. I sit upright and my eyes open to colors and objects so subtle that my mind cannot comprehend nor recall. I gaze at the field as the air's gentle breath whispers across my face, taking in the weeping leaves of the eucalyptus. Why? Why had I not noticed before? Surely I should know them. I created them. My own pen held so often in my hand, but still my mind reels, grasping for the familiar, the known, the comfortable. But is this not why I came? My desire to experience the subtleties and pleasures of my own skill, so often quenched by my stronger pull to simply create? A view to behold, I sit mesmerized for hours, letting the silence speak its own language, a language that I somehow understand. The cool clover receives my body once again. I close my eyes and dream.
Oh, that was a very nice, wistful little entry there.
Very poetic.
Yeah.
Not much to say on that one. There's not a lot there. It seems kind of like it's a place to just go decompress.
Exactly.
So,
it's a place to put a hammock in and just have a lazy day.
So, next one is called Shimmer.
Shimmer. And we just recorded an episode where I was critiquing names. And his names aren't necessarily the best, but they're not the weakest either.
Well, his first one was called Inception, so...
Okay, that feels a little pretentious. But
that was his very first one. He was... How old was he then? It was in Book of Atrus.
Yeah, and he was being taught by a super pretentious dude.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Who didn't even bother to name his ages.
Or his own son, but, I still cannot get... Oh, okay. All right. Continue.
Shimmer. I finally inhale the thick air with its damp aroma of warm sulfur. The ground beneath my feet moves with gentle subtleties as I peer into the white-hot creator's vastness. I stand motionless, viewing this living event. I am astonished at its life reflected in my eyes. I never dreamed the simple strokes of my pen could have such crushing consequence, yet retain an inner beauty as this. No life in the traditional form is visible. My leaves from earlier works have no home here. Heavy clouds filled with moisture are not welcome. Somehow, though, this all still ebbs and flows as a living being, moving me atop its back with little care or thought. My presumed significance is now in perspective.
Wow.
No idea what that's about. It sounds cool.
You know what it sounds like to me is that it's some sort of... He's mentioned, so there's no clouds, there's no water cycle as we know it.
But there's sulfur.
It makes me think it's a geothermal kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the things that are alive. If none of you all listening know, there are methane pockets in the Atlantic Ocean that house a very specific kind of life that live off of those methane pockets.
Extremophiles.
Yeah, and it feels like that's what he's experiencing for the first time. Because in the cleft, he wouldn't have he wouldn't have experienced anything like that. So
this one's called Heralding.
Heralding.
The starflies swarmed around me as I walked through the forest, attracted by the light of my lamp. Soon their numbers increased to such an extent that my light seemed insignificant compared to the light that they emitted.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I decided to turn my lamp off and walk away to see if they would disperse. Quite the contrary. Instead, their numbers continued to grow. Standing a few yards away from the swarm, I watched them in amazement, an orb of light slowly growing and forming great shapes, acting almost as a single organism. First, they grouped closely together, looking like a miniature sun. Now they spread far apart, forming a great spherical helix. Now they form a spherical undulating web. How these unintelligent creatures communicate, I know not. Who conducts this beautiful dance?
So it's almost like fireflies, but with a hive mind.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Also, it's kind of an interesting visual image. If you've ever seen me play a later Cyan game called Abduction, there's this kind of glowing, moving, pulsing particle thing, like an orb that encases you and stuff. It's kind of like
I've seen that. I've seen you play that game every once in a while.
This one is unnamed. There is no name mentioned for this one. And this is a pretty dark one, actually. Though their fevers persist, I am helpless to assist them. It comforts me to know, however, that at least this horrid disease is not fatal. It begins with tremendous fevers, violent shaking, and great chest pains. The fevers are followed by a stage of dreamy delirium, during which the diseased person sleeps persistently, only infrequently half waking to mutter confused utterances.
Huh.
After this relative calm comes the most painful third stage, when the diseased awakes in a state of frenzied madness. They stare wildly with glazed eyes, screaming and clawing at their own bodies. As this stage progresses, they become dangerous, even violent in some cases. As I am constantly here to act as physician, though I have only been able to mildly decrease the sharp internal pains that they complain of, I am in constant distress of catching this disease myself. I have no idea what causes it, or if it's communicable. Hopefully, I am immune.
It makes me wonder, so it's an unnamed book, so it makes me wonder if he was trying to say, okay, now that we've trapped Gen, let me go see if there's anything of his I should fix.
Don't know.
That's
a great theory, I think.
That's where my brain goes, because it's Atrus names everything.
That's true.
Right away. So for him to keep something unnamed, and he probably doesn't even want to refer to the number, because then he has to think about his jerk dad.
Possibly. That's not a bad idea, actually.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's going there and he's like, I'm sure my dad's messed up something else. Yeah, that's where my brain's going. Okay.
But like I said, pretty dark one.
Yeah, it is really dark.
White rock. About the time the ting takes on a brownish color, it emerges from the water for the first time and slowly and clumsily crawls onto the rocky shore. Most of the beautiful animals are eaten by birds, the ting having no natural defenses except for the coloration, which now matches the color of the stones. Some of the ting, however, safely find their way to small pocks and holes in the rocks. There, they curl into balls and almost immediately begin to entomb themselves beneath a rock-like crust which they create. After 2 months, the ting shells become rubbery and soft, finally ripping open to expose hundreds of little creatures called solistings. They are, at first, small and lizard-like, scrabbling madly in all directions. In their adult stage, they are quick-moving and live high in the trees. It seems I am only able to examine them carefully after they have been cooked by the Shiranao and are placed before me as a meal.
That is a weird life cycle. Again, that's so fantastical. I can't even think of anything that would be like that.
But it's interesting that we're told about an animal more than we're told about the people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, he's always been more about the setting than he has been about.
He enjoys the people. He likes the culture. He likes learning about it. But he is also more interested in how his writing impacts the world.
And it's very much like, it's one of the reasons why I used to like writing plays. The great thing about writing a play is that you give it to somebody and somebody has to interpret it. And for some playwrights, that's hell. And for some playwrights like me, it's really exciting to see what people bring to it. And it feels like for Atrus, it's the same thing. So, and the people, I think for him, people are so similar to what he is that he's like, that's not as exciting as this animal that starts as one thing and suddenly becomes hundreds of little things that grow bigger. That's so bizarre. So bizarre.
Serenal. I have been here for hours, long before the yellow hands of the sun could reach my shivering body, waiting. Simply waiting. The stars above that had enchanted me just nights before were beckoning me to glance up at them in delight. A cursory acknowledgement was all I could muster. The graceful trees with their coarse bark and leaves of silk and sweet fruit stood silent already, having been rejected by my focused concentration this solitary and dark early morning. My only companion, a small starfly, rested upon my thin shirt, which contributed little warmth to my trembling hands, an oversight I'll remember on my next visit. But even he could not endure my silence. And now, as I study the soil at my kneeling body, I wait. The opaque arms of the Tuliema at last thrust through the black earth into the frigid night air, pulling, reaching, fighting, and searching for light. The timing had to be exact. Only moments after each of the Tuliema's 3 lifeless leaves fully left the earth's grave, the sun's arrows pierced the plant, injecting life, creating an explosion of color, a hue of yellow the sun itself coveted. I looked up with pleasure across the awakening field, flooded now in a sea of yellow.
Wow. Huh. Speaking of that, brain going in a weird thing, if anybody's read The Little Prince, there's this, the Little Prince like hops on like planets visiting other people, and there's this one time where he visits this fox and they're friends for a while, and then the Little Prince has to leave, and there's this thought of like, well, now your hair always looked like wheat, and every time I see wheat I think of you, so it reminds me of that. And then I realized, is the Little Prince just a story for the dunny that some Frenchman claimed and and then decided to you know yeah, I don't know why I suddenly went there.
The last age that we're going to talk about here is does not have its own journal. A lot of these are just in their own separate journals that we had just pieces of. This is actually from the Mechanical Journal. As you remember, the Mechanical Age was the one with the fortress and the gears, and it was the one where there were survivors from a raid by the Black Pirates.
And Atrus was trying to help them to survive the next time.
Yes.
And then his sons aligned with the pirates.
Eventually.
But
they did manage to help them survive at first.
Yeah.
So, this one is called Aramal. Even as I build, he's in Mechanical Age
so
he's writing this.
Okay.
So, even as I build, as the physical substance of my body strains to construct the objects that I require in this age, I feel the outer fringes of my consciousness tapping the mental substance of my being, the edges of my mind planting the seeds of imagination that will become the next age. So I've begun to have glimpses of Aramal, a sea without water, only a single lush oasis replete in the ocean of sand. The momentum of my creativity pendulates once again as I tire of the damp, dead mechanisms prevalent in my current age to the dry island of life in my next.
Oh. So he's writing about it, but he's not in it when he's writing about it. He's just fantasizing about it.
Yeah.
Because it's the opposite of what he's in.
Yeah.
And I just realized earlier I referred to Oasis as an island, and that's...
This one sounds like it would be Oasis, but...
Yeah.
Oasis there is like a spiritual oasis where he can go and de-stress.
Right, so. Exactly. Hammock land.
The last we have here is not an age itself, but this is just an excerpt from Atrus's personal journal.
Oh.
I am not able to understand, only to understand more. The picture that I wish to examine is not static, but it's growing and living. Even as I understand how the hinges of a door allow me to open it, I find that it leads to a room even larger than the first. But I think that perhaps that is part of wisdom, knowing that I cannot know all, and understanding that I cannot understand all. If the Maker's creation was understandable, would I not find the Maker something less than great? Would I not consider myself equal with the Maker? Mm-hmm. It is a tribute then to his greatness when I find myself more confused, even at the very instant that I have gained insight.
Huh.
The Maker is part of like it's kind of hard. I tried to figure out who the maker is, but the maker just seems to be like a deistic interpretation of a creator.
Right, because, well, like, the Dunny art is literally deism.
Right.
It is literally deism.
So above the Dunny, they do perceive that maybe something is creating...
Right.
You know,
the classic allegory of the clockmaker starting the clock and just letting it go.
Right. So that's our first mini episode.
Oh my gosh. My brain went in so many different directions. I did not expect that.
Yeah, they write Atrus's journals very well, I think.
Well, it makes sense that if he's doing an art that involves a lot of writing,
right,
that he has to also be a very good writer. And he was educated well by his grandmother. So, yeah.
So, anyway, we're not going to do the outro because it's only been half an hour. You guys remember where we're at.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening.
All right.
And we'll do more mini episodes.
Remember, get them first when you're a patron.
Thank you, guys.